Hi there, welcome back. Just wanted to do a bit of a race recap from last weekend's Graftham Water Duathlon standard distance, which doubled up as a the final world qualifier for next year in Pontevedra in Spain. So 4 weeks back into training after my end of season break, which was a couple of weeks downtime, completely resting and doing nothing. I wasn't expecting too much really going into the race, but just wanted today just to give a bit of a race recap really. Last weekend start was about 8:45, so it was a bit of an early morning. Luckily, the clocks changed last weekend in the UK, so meant getting an extra hour in bed, which was good. I got up around, I think it was about 4:30 in the end, with the aim to sort of leave around 5:30, 5:45. Up really early and got in the car sort of around 5:45. And it's, from me, Grafham Water is close to 2 hour drive, just under really, that time of the morning. Took it pretty steady really driving there, mainly motorways, bit of dual carriageway, and literally you get off the dual carriageway and it's a sort of a 2 mile stint, 3 miles to get to actually Grafham Water itself. You drive in on a little bit of the course as well, so it was good to see some of the course on the way into the start line as well. As a world qualifier as well, there's quite a few people there that I knew, which was fantastic, in multiple sort of age groups. So it's good to catch up with a few people I haven't seen for a little while. It's always find with these sorts of races, and when you race abroad, there's such a good camaraderie between sort of people. I met quite a lot of good friends, I suppose, through doing these races. It's always good to catch up and have a good chat with a few people. I got there probably just after 7 o'clock, in and around 7. Lots of people already there turning up. Car park was getting pretty busy. There was a sprint race on as well on the same day, which started a little bit earlier than the standard distance duathlon. So the course was a 10 kilometre run, I think probably about a 38 kilometre bike, and then another 5 kilometre run. So once I'd got there, I sort of went and got my numbers, signed in, did the obligatory sort of writing your details on the back of the number, just to be safe really, just in case anything happens. A lot of these races that you do, on the back of your numbers you'll be able to put like your contact details, but also a partner or a friend or somebody's with you, or even if you're going on racing alone, just to give some details just in case anything happens out on the course, just as a safety measure. So I picked up my numbers, done all of that, and then looked to get a bit of a slight warm up in before the race. Just did a steady mile run just mainly around the car park, to be fair. Going into the race as well, I was over at the Cotswolds the week before for a few days. Picked up a bit of a niggle, and I have an ongoing little bit of a niggle with my left knee. It tends to be on the inner side of the left knee. I actually think it's when I've got tight quads. I think as well, just coming back off a couple of weeks of no training, coming straight back into quite a hard 3 week block, an easy week before the race, but literally I think maybe next year, I think after I've had my off season, I'm going to just come back into that training a little bit gentler, I think, than perhaps I've done this year. And I'm also suffering with a bit of a pain in the Achilles as well. So I've been seeing the physio for that, who I see maybe once a month. Had a bit of acupuncture in it on the Monday, but to be fair, it hadn't really settled down, and actually on the race, which I'll talk about shortly, it wasn't great. This week it's been pretty painful, to be fair. I've got another physio in a couple of weeks. It's the earliest I can get in, but I'm doing a lot of stuff at home now to hopefully just enable me to train and just keep that at bay. So the run itself, it's quite a technical run, to be fair, at Graftham Water. So like I said, the start was 8:45, mass start. The men and the women often will race together on things like duathlons, and I suppose as well with a lot of road running and things like that at this sort of level. So when you go onto the international sort of level, you won't be starting at the same time, so you'll have sort of separate races. So So the start 8:45, went off pretty quick. I tried not to go too hard, to be fair, on the run, first run, especially with my knee and my Achilles just being a little bit not 100%. But felt like I was running pretty well through the first sort of couple of mile. I always find, whatever reason, I always end up being at the front of the group. I need to start learning to sort of track on people's shoulders, run a little bit behind the group. But yeah, for whatever reason, I always find when I'm running, especially on the first one, I always seem to be at the front of the group and pushing the pace. Excuse me, which isn't too bad. I don't think, especially on the run, but sometimes it's quite nice just to have a few people there just to take the pace and just so I can just switch off a little bit. So, like I said, the run, sort of one half of the run goes up and down by the reservoir itself, which is on quite flat, tarmacy, gravelly sort of terrain, which is actually really nice to run on. And it's a sort of a really quick sort of pathway, and it's a very sort of out and back run. And then as you come back to the start, after probably about a mile or so, you sort of hit some grass. Especially with this duathlon being in and around October, end of October. We've had quite a lot of rain recently. The grass itself was quite slippery in places, very technical as well. I mean, if it was a cross country, not so much, but for wearing sort of carbon road shoes and things like that, so it made it a little bit slippery underfoot. There was a couple of people that actually had a couple of little spills. After about a couple of miles, sort of halfway into the first out and back on the grass section, there's a bit of a descent that comes down past close to the reservoir, and there's a couple of people just slipped there. So for me, just wanted to take it a bit easy on the grass, especially with my knee and my Achilles, and just work my way through and just see how I could just maintain the pace, really. I think there was quite a few quick runners in the race. I think the guys that were leading, the guy that actually came in first on the run, I think he was part of a team. Then you had Adam Dart, who was second in on the run. I felt I was running pretty well the first lap. Second lap, probably not so great. Looking at my results from the split post-race, I was actually a couple of minutes slower than I was on that course last year, which was a little bit disappointing. But coming off a couple of weeks break, first 4 weeks back into training, and probably doing a little bit more volume than I have done previous years, in terms of the sort of some of my longer, I've got to introduce a longer session midweek as well now, so I think probably carrying a bit of fatigue and probably just a little bit race rusty, to be fair, on the run. But yeah, pretty pleased overall with the run. Got onto the bike. I was unsure how I was going to go on the bike, to be fair. Had a pretty good transition and got out onto the bike in and around a guy called Richard Shepherd, who I've raced with for many years. Richard actually beat me by about 15 minutes the first World's Duathlons I went in 2016. I've managed to get the better of him the last few races we've done over the last sort of year. So we sort of went out on the bike in and around the sort of same sort of time, which was good. So Richard sort of probably got a bit of a better transition than myself and was up the road a little bit. Managed to work my way back up to him, and we sort of not worked together in terms of drafting, but we were in and around each other for quite a good chunk of the bike. The bike at Grafham's, again, very much an out and back sort of loop, which is great to sort of see where other people are on the course. It was a little bit muddy in places on the course. Straight out of transition, after about 3 or 4 mile, there was a little bit of mud on the road, and there was a couple of guys that I nearly saw sort of have some close to accidents on that part of the course. So that's something, just maybe some signs out there would have been perhaps a good thing, but it's really difficult to sort of put signs everywhere on these sort of open road races. So it's much better, obviously, when you're racing in places like Alton Park, which is a closed road race circuit. So those sorts of places are a lot easier to manage. But it's a pretty good bike course. It's a good, honest bike course at Alton. I mean, at at Grafham. So yeah, I managed to work my way through. Had a pretty good ride. I felt like I was riding well. Managed to sort of get past quite a few people into the sort of the first half of the race, probably 3, 4, 5 people perhaps after the first run, and then sort of going out to the sort of second turn point as such. I could see some of the other riders coming back, and I felt like I was maintaining a good rhythm and a good pace up and close to sort of 240, 250 watts, which is probably whereabouts I tend to sort of hit my sort of wattage when I'm racing over the duathlon, depending on the course. On the way back though, there was quite a few groups. It was a shame really. I think on the way back, sometimes can happen where there was a lot of grouping of riders, a little bit of drafting as well, which was not great to see. So sort of it was quite difficult to keep the pace high in that sort of environment where it felt like you were making the move to get around the group to the front of the group, and then you'd have somebody come past you again and you'd have to slow up. So the sort of last 8 mile wasn't great on the bike, to be fair. A lot of races I've recently been able to do, I've managed to just get my head down, ride my own rhythm and ride my own pace. So I actually think the sort of the back half of the ride was probably a bit slower than I thought, just because of the traffic on the road in terms of other cyclists, which was a shame really. And there was, like I said, a lot of grouping on the bikes, which was not great to see as well. But actually the bike split compared to the previous year when I did the British Champs there. I actually rode probably about close to a minute quicker, which was good to see. Although the first run I was a bit down on where I was, which was probably to be expected with carrying a little bit of a niggle in the knee and in the Achilles. I came off the bike pretty much still with Richard as well, which was good. He just sat off me a little bit in the last sort of 5 miles just to keep out of trouble with all of the with the bigger group of cyclists that we were sort of having to battle with. So coming out of transition, I didn't feel too great. Richard managed to get a bit of a 20-30 second gap on me over the first mile, and I thought he was just going to run away from me for the rest of the course. But I actually managed to dig quite deep on that sort of the concrete gravelly section before going onto the grass, and actually managed to started to work my way back up to Richard. We sort of got halfway through the sort of the 5k second run, and I managed to sort of get back up to Richard and get past him on the sort of second half of the run, which was really good. I think, like I said, the grass was very wet, quite slippery, but I seemed to be running quite well once I'd got into the rhythm. I think the first mile was difficult, just coming off the bike with my knee and my Achilles just didn't respond too well to just coming straight off onto the running. But once I got into the rhythm, I managed to sort of get that sort of get some fluidity, get some flow into my running, and actually didn't run too bad in the end on the final run. Looking at the results from last year, I was pretty much the same, if not a couple of seconds within the time that I did at Grafham last year, which was good as well. So all in all, not a bad race. Like I said, after 4 weeks training, after the off season, and I think as well prior to the off season, I was really sort of at a phase where I was sort of tapering down end of season sort of races and things like that. So probably at the moment really not at my fittest. So to come away with a pretty good result, a minute in time difference to probably where I was last year over sort of an hour 58 sort of course. Hour 58 2-hour course it was good to see. So and like I said, the bike, I felt pretty good on the bike, and probably could have gone a bit quicker if the groups weren't as tricksy to sort of get around and things like that. So all in all, another great event organised by ATW as well, who have a range of sort of road races, duathlons, triathlons. They always do some great photography, and it's always pretty much up on their site within a few days as well, which is always good, and you don't have to pay for that as well extra, which is great. Like I said, a good atmosphere. Met some people I haven't seen for a little while as well, which was always good to see. So all in all, not a bad day's racing. I think I was 13th overall. Got my qualification spot. Just got to get that confirmed through British Triathlon in the next week or so, hopefully. But that was all, which was the big aim for the race, really, just to get my qualification spot for Pontevedra next year, which I've ticked off now. So that takes a big little bit of pressure off the shoulders, especially as it was the last race as well. Ideally, I would have preferred to have done it earlier on in the year and perhaps not have raced this quickly off my off season. But like I said, it's sometimes quite good to get the rustiness out of and just do a bit of a hit out. Training's great, but sometimes racing is always that gives you that little bit extra, and I think it'll hopefully now just put me in good stead for the next few weeks, where depending on the Achilles, maybe do a couple of cross countries with the club, and there's a chance I might do a half marathon at Silverstone, but I'm not 100% on that yet with the knee and the Achilles. Just want to make sure I can get on top of that in terms of treatment and stuff, and make sure that's in a good place. So so hopefully you've liked a bit of the race cap. It's worth checking out ATW, having a look at their website, seeing what races are coming up. And hopefully you're liking some of the content. Please subscribe if you haven't, or give me a like. If you want to know anything more about the race, put a comment below, and look forward to hopefully seeing you all soon. And thanks for the support. Bye.